Alara stood over the fallen Hegemony soldier, her hands trembling as she realized her body still remembered exactly how to kill. Blood pooled around the man's heavy boots, a dark contrast to the pristine white floors of the sector hub. The metal shard in her grip hissed with the heat of the strike. She didn't recognize the woman who had just moved with such predatory grace. Have you ever wondered if the skills we try to bury are the very things that will eventually save us? Subscribe to follow this journey of reclamation. Now, let's go back to where this choice truly began. A week ago, the hardest decision Kalen Voss had faced was whether to skip breakfast before his orientation at the Sector 9 Reparation Center. The air in the facility tasted of ozone and sterile floor wax, a scent that usually signaled the end of things, not a beginning. Kalen smoothed the front of his dress uniform. 5 years of intergalactic conflict had left him with a slight limp and a deep exhaustion that no amount of shore leave could touch. He wasn't looking for a reward. He was looking for a way to feel human again in a galaxy that had spent years treating him like a weapon. Director Thorne sat behind a desk made of synthwood, looking more like an accountant than a man presiding over the spoils of a defeated empire. He slid a digital tablet across the surface. He explained the legality of the neural tether and the transfer of the woman, Alara, as property under the Treaty of Restoration. Kalen stared at the screen. The Hegemony had always been efficient with their cruelty. They didn't just conquer, they integrated. "She's a specialized unit," Thorne said, his voice as dry as parchment. "Excellent for domestic management, high-level logistics, or whatever else you might require of a high-ranking veteran." When Alara was led into the room, Kalen felt a sudden, sharp pressure in his chest. She was tall, with the silver-spun hair characteristic of the Athelian people, but her eyes were vacant. They were the eyes of someone who was watching a world 3 rooms away. The faint blue glow of a neural tether pulsed at the base of her skull, a parasitic light that dictated her every breath. He knew what happened to the prizes that weren't claimed by sympathetic officers. They were sent to the asteroid mines or assigned to the harsher labor divisions where the lifespan was measured in months. Kalen's jaw tightened. He signed the custody papers with a jagged stroke of the stylus. "Let's go," he muttered, not looking at her. The walk to his apartment was silent. Terra Prime was rebuilding, a city of cranes and half-finished glass towers. People stared. An officer with a war prize was a common sight. Yet the shame of it felt like a physical weight on Kalen's shoulders. Once inside the door, he gestured toward the kitchen. He grabbed a chipped ceramic mug from the counter, one of the few things he'd kept from his life before the war, and filled it with water. "You can sit," he said. Alara didn't move. She stood in the center of the small living room, her posture perfect, her expression a terrifying blank slate. "Master," she said, the words sounding like a programmed script. "Where do you intend to use me?" Kalen froze. The water in the mug sloshed over the rim. "I'm not going to use you. I don't care what the papers say," he snapped, perhaps more harshly than he intended. But she didn't flinch. She simply waited for a command that made sense to her conditioning. Kalen watched her. The silence in the apartment felt heavy, broken only by the hum of the city's climate stabilizers. He set the chipped ceramic mug on the table between them. He realized then that freedom was a concept she could no longer process. "Drink," he said, pushing the mug toward her. She obeyed, but her movements were mechanical. Over the next few days, Kalen noticed her staring at the data ports in the walls. Her fingers would twitch in patterns that looked like decryption sequences. It wasn't until Silas Vane, an old contact from intelligence, visited that the truth surfaced. The Kronos Hegemony didn't just give us servants, they gave us thousands of unwitting spies, Silas whispered, his eyes darting to Alara. He explained that the neural tethers were more than just compliance tools. They were biological recorders, leaking every scrap of data they heard in the homes of high-ranking Terran officers back to a sleeper network. Alara wasn't just a refugee. She was a walking microphone. Removing the tether is like untangling roots from a tree. One wrong move, and the spirit breaks with the machine. Silas warned him of the risk, but they had no choice. The coup began before they could even find a surgeon. The building shook as a shockwave rippled through Sector 9. Hegemony hardliners had triggered the remote activation signal. In the hallway, a soldier charged. And now, back in that corridor, the air thick with the smell of scorched ozone, the outcome was decided. Alara didn't just remember how to kill, she chose to protect. She didn't wait for Kalen's command. She stepped in front of him, her movements a blur of Athelian martial prowess that had been suppressed but never erased. The soldier hit the floor before Kalen could even draw his sidearm. "Alara?" he breathed. She turned to him. The vacant look was gone. In its place was a terrifying clarity. She reached for the terminal at the end of the hall. Her hands didn't tremble this time. She began feeding the coalition the frequency codes needed to kill the sleeper signal, her mind moving faster than the hegemony's encryption. The coup died in the cradles of the city's servers. Months later, the sun rose over a different Terra Prime. Alara didn't stand in the center of a living room anymore. She stood at the head of a council table in the newly reclaimed Ithelian colony. Freedom isn't just the absence of a master. It's the terrifying burden of having to choose for yourself. She had said those words during the inaugural session, and today, she lived them. Kalen sat in the gallery, watching her lead. On the table in front of her, amidst the high-tech displays and official seals, sat a chipped ceramic mug. It was a reminder of the first choice she had ever made for herself. The choice to drink, and then the choice to fight. Choice. How would you handle the burden of a freedom you never asked for? We'll be here tomorrow with another story from the edge of the galaxy.